My name is Susan, and I am here with my friend, Dr. Jon Finn. He's joining us from England, and this sounds so much better. And, it's really exciting. He is the author of a brand new book that's just releasing to the world today called The Habit Mechanic. He has the actual beautiful thing, and I was blessed to get a pre-release copy a few months ago. And so I have just been really, learning and enjoying. We officially connected on LinkedIn probably about a year and a half ago. And what he was sharing on there really resonated with me. A lot of with what my life has been going through, and my journey has really learned that habits are so important. And I think it's about 2 PM there. So how has your day gone so far on the big release day?
It's been a hectic start, yes. We've had lots of really kind feedback and lots of people who've been reading the book previously, who've been leaving reviews, etc. But yeah, it's very, very good. I think quite unusually for a book, and this is absolutely honest, this book's taken me over 20 years to write. This isn't an idea I had last year or the year before or the year before that. Many of these books in these areas are like that. A journalist will find an idea they like and they'll go pursue that for maybe 2 or 3 years, get some funding from a publisher to do it. This is literally my life's work. All I've done as a professional, from leaving school, I went to university to study psychology and performance, and this is all I've done. And all the ideas in the book over the past 20 years, I've been taking what the research says and I've been working out how to apply that to actually help people to do better. So everything that's in the book has been tested and refined and tested again and refined again, till we got to the point, or until I got to the point where I was happy to release this into the public domain as a book. And you asked about today. Yes, so today is it's fantastic that we can actually release this now, because I know that if people use this approach, it literally changes their life. It's one book, but actually it could have easily been three books. I'm sure you will agree with that, Susan.
I think I commented on that once, and you said, "Yeah, but I want them to have everything." So it's
I want to. If I could give this book to everyone in the world, I would, because I think it'd make the world a better place. Because it's so challenging now in the world that we live in. So, because of all the work that's gone into this, all the people that have contributed, trying things out and testing and giving feedback, my family, my friends, my colleagues. It's delightful that we've actually got this out there now and people can start to use it, and they can start to, you can pick this book up and learn something in 5 minutes, practical, just pick a page and you'll get something good. So yeah, I'm delighted, and people are already, who've not read it before, since it's been launched this morning, have started to read it and they're telling me this and this, and they've learned this and this. So that's fantastic. Yeah, so I'm excited in a number of different ways.
I think it's great. And I know I have enjoyed it and I've learned so much from it. And I think the habit mechanic, when I think of a mechanic, I think of him like going into a shop and he's got this whole room or a big toolbox. He's got all these tools and they're great tools. They didn't just have the tools. He knows when to use them and how to use them. And I think that's part of what you've presented in here for us our habits and creating things. And you've got stuff that can help me, my friends, my clients. Like I said, it is available for anybody. I know you talk even about diet, exercise, and sleep, and that's something as a foundation really for anybody that's going to help them to live better and do better. And you talk a lot about emotional management, and even you talk about the work of breath work. And those are some things that I work with in my world too. So I love that there's all these different facets, but you even go into things of helping somebody to know how to show up and prepare themselves to do a great presentation. And I still got more of the book to go. So I'm like learning so many different things. I know I always like to find out how a person got here. And you said you've been writing this for 20 years, but like when you were back, like maybe in high school or something, what did you have in your mind? What did you think you'd be doing about this time of life?
Well, my father's a plumber and my grandfather's a plumber. So
Okay.
Maybe going into that industry. But I was lucky in the UK at that time. University became very accessible, and pretty much anyone could go. I certainly wasn't the most academic person. I was very good at playing sports, and I was interested in sports. and I got advised, that I'm not sure it was great advice, but I got advised to go to university and study something you would enjoy. And at that time you could study sports science, which is quite, I suppose, a new thing at the time. So I went to study that, psychology, physiology, motor control, which is how you learn to learn, nutrition, so all those different facets. And I just got really interested in the psychology side. I played golf and I played rugby, and I could really connect with how unhelpful thinking can take over in pressurized situations. And there's an experience I talk about in the book where I was playing in the biggest rugby game of my life, where I essentially choked under pressure. And it really gave me a kick up the backside to start paying more attention to my studies. But I think how we think is so invisible to us. We are doing it literally every millisecond of every day. Yeah. And I say to people, you know, you're thinking all the time. So the way we do it is we'd say, let's do a little exercise to understand how we think. Just put your hands on your ears and cup them a bit like this. Imagine you're wearing an invisible pair of headphones. Think of the size of the headphones, the color of the headphones, the brand of the headphones, what's going on, what's being played through the ears. Is it music? Is it a podcast? Is it your favorite playlist? And as you're doing this, notice that you're talking to yourself. And if you don't think you're talking to yourself, notice how you're saying to yourself, I'm not talking to myself. I'm not a crazy person. So this is going on all the time. Yeah, we don't understand that because it's so normal to us. So just that insight alone is fascinating to me. I remember being sat in my dad's van going to play golf with him. And it was the British Open at the time, and it was on the radio. And there was a golfer called John Daly, American golfer, very different type of golfer. And he won that British Open. But what the commentators were talking about was that he talked about picturing the shot before he played the shot, using what we would call imagery, or what we call in the habit mechanic focus pictures. And of course, Jack Nicklaus was very famous for going to the movies inside his head. But the discussion actually was should this be classed as cheating? Is John Daly cheating because he's manipulating his own thoughts? And I just thought that was fascinating. As probably a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So, you know, so this, how we think and what we call psychology is such a huge part of our health levels, our happiness levels, our performance levels, how we are as a parent, how we are as a partner. Yet most people have very little awareness of it because we are just not designed to think about ourselves in that way. We naturally have what we'd call very low habit mechanic intelligence. And what I've learned over the last 20 plus years is that if you can actually help people to develop more habit mechanic intelligence, life just starts to get easier. But yet no one ever teaches us how to do this. We have snippets here, snippets there, but no one teaches us how to do it. And that's why I've created this book. And that's why I created Tougher Minds, because I'm really passionate about helping people to do better in life. That's my mission. So I could charge tens of thousands of pounds, and we do, for what's inside this book. Yeah, I've decided that I'm going to give it to everybody for $20 or whatever it costs. It costs quite a lot to print now as well. The book I've got in my hand costs $20 to print. So we're not making, we just kind of cover it.
I saw the Kindle is just like $2.99. So you guys go buy it. If nothing else, go get it on Kindle. If you don't get anything else, get it there. Let's help get his book numbers up too, which is, it's awesome. And the more, it'll just help get the word out there for everybody. But you're right. It's like you say, such a huge percentage of the things that we do every day are just by habit. We don't even thinking about it or even realizing we're doing it. And I love it. You say not all of those habits are beneficial. And so it's just so important to, you know, be intentional and seek those healthy habits. So tell us, what would be your definition of a habit mechanic?
Yeah, the way I think about this is, first of all, you understand how your brain operates, not like a neuroscientist would. I know many neuroscientists who don't even know how the entire brain operates. They know about, they study this little bit of it. That's all they're interested in. But you've got a gist sense of this is what our brain's designed to do. So that's really helpful to understand. And then you've got a way of actually analyzing your behavior, and that's all in the book. So actually, just in a very simple way, developing more intelligence about yourself, about your habits, your helpful habits and your unhelpful habits. And in the book, there are some really simple tools you can use. And again, they're all tried and tested.
Yeah.
That really get you thinking about yourself in a way, I think you would agree, Susan, that you probably never thought about yourself before.
Right.
But it's really, really, really helpful. And again,
yeah,
we've been able to create those very powerful self-reflections because we've tested them on about 10,000 people, and we've refined them over the years. So you understand how your brain works, what you're designed to do. You've got a sense of your habits, your helpful habits and your unhelpful habits. But then actually you can celebrate the things that you're doing well, but also just start to work on yourself. Work on one tiny unhelpful habit at a time. You might have a list of things you want to work on, but just picking one thing and then having the tools to be able to build a sustainable new habit, whether that's a better sleep habit or a better exercise habit or a better diet habit or a better stress management habit or a better confidence habit or a better productivity habit or a better performing under pressure habit. Or once you've worked out how to be at your best, a better leadership habit or a better team member habit. And that's what habit mechanics can do. So it's not about knowing what you should do. It's about being able to make sustainable change. And that's where the behavioral science is so important, and largely untapped. I think our approach is definitely unique with how it brings in the behavioral science in a really actionable way, and making sure that we don't just rely on our willpower, that we create plans that make it as easy as possible to actually achieve the things that we want to achieve. So for me, a habit mechanic is someone who's got a just understanding of how their brain works. They've got a way of analyzing their habits, not just once, but they're doing that weekly and monthly, and they keep checking in with themselves. And then they've got ways to actually build sustainable new habits. And that's what's in the book. It's not, the book's not a sell through. It's not, we'll tell you a little bit and then you need to come to us to find out more. It is literally is everything I know about helping people to be better is in that book. And it's deliberately done that way because I want to help as many people be their best. That's my mission in life. So if you want to be a habit mechanic, and also if you want to progress to being a chief habit mechanic, it's all in the book.
And the chief habit mechanic is the one who is teaching others some of these things and helping them. So you're kind of that next level of leadership. So that's so awesome. Now, when you think of the British, a lot of times we think about tea. And you've actually created a tea that helps us with these things, the TEA, the Tiny Empowering Actions. And I think that's one of the foundational things, or the easy things that anybody can do at any time. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your tea?
Well, I'm glad. Let's just clarify, it's not a drug.
Not a drug or a drink.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you connected the T, because that was one of the nice things I thought about the T acronym, is that it's something that we have daily and it's something you do regularly, certainly if you're British. So I know that the easier it is to do something, the more likely you will do it, because that's how our brains work. Our brain's number one operating rule is the easier it is to do something, the more likely it is you will do it. Or, in other words, your brain's number one operating rule is it wants to save energy, which is why it turns everything into a habit. Things that are easy to do don't cost a lot of energy, so your brain will go there and do them. So over the years, we've tried and tested lots of different tiny planning approaches. So what's the smallest amount of effort you can put into something to actually make a meaningful impact on your day? And that's what the T plan is. So the daily T plan, T stands for, as you said, Tiny Empowering Action. You can just do it in 2 minutes a day. It takes, you do it in 3 simple steps. The first step is you rate yourself. So if I do it in the morning, I rate myself, how well did I do my best? And I want to find the visual in the book. This is in chapter 1 of the book. How well did I do my best to be my best? Out of 10, and you can just do it on a continuum. 10 would mean you were perfect. 1 would mean you failed. You just rate yourself. It doesn't matter what, it's not about being perfect. Just saying, where am I at? So I might say, well, I'm about a 7. That's great. I've recognized where I am. And by the way, I think if you're getting 7s and 8s regular, you're doing really well. Step 2 then is, so you say, how well did I do my best and achieve my goals yesterday? Out of 10, 10 would mean you were perfect. 1 would mean you failed. Give yourself a score. Step 2 is, you think, okay, if I was a 7 yesterday, what tiny empowering action could I do today to give myself a chance of just doing a little bit better, to get into a 7, get to a 7.5. So some of the examples that I would use as MITs are things like only check the news once today, go for a 5-minute walk at lunchtime, eat a piece of fruit for breakfast or with breakfast, write a written reflection, a positive written reflection at the end of the day. So you write down that, and then you say step 3, you say why. Why is doing that thing going to be helpful for me? So let's say I pick positive written reflection at the end of the day. I'll say, well, it'll help me to draw that line in the sand between home and work, which is more challenging now in the hybrid workplace. It's going to help me to de-stress. It's going to help me to activate my evening routine. It's going to help me to sleep better. It's going to help me to feel better in the morning so I can be more productive tomorrow. So just by spending 2 minutes making that tiny little plan, I find that it saves me at least 1 hour every day, and arguably a lot more than that. So by the time I get to the end of the week, I'm half a day up. I'm even a day up, you know. And you don't just have to do that on your work days. You can also do it when you want to relax and switch off. So on a day where I want to relax and switch off, my tea might be, don't check my emails today. Switch the phone off by this time. Just giving myself the very best chance of actually switching off and recharging. So in the book, we talk about brain states and recharging. So that's an example of a tea. And soon, in the coming weeks, we'll be releasing our app as well, the Habit Mechanic University app, which will be available on Apple and Android. That'll be absolutely free. And that's first and foremost designed as a place where you can post your tea plan in the Habit Mechanic community and get support of each other. And again, we've tried and tested that idea. It's really powerful. You make that commitment and you get the support and you share what's working well for you. And we start to activate one of the change factors, which is community knowledge and skills. So that was quite a long answer, Susan, to quite a short question, but hopefully that gives insight.
No, but that's good. And it is such a helpful tool. And just from both of your last little comments, there's boy, that planning ahead, it gives you direction and your brain's not scrambling all the time or squirrel. It's like you've got, you know, where you're shooting for, and that just helps so much. And I think having those tiny action plans is not overwhelming. And again, it's like, okay, we're not going to be perfect. You may not get it done. It's okay. You don't rate yourself as high, but every day you can do the same action step multiple days in a row. It's not like you have to have something new every day. You can keep going until you get where you want to be. And I just think that's like so important. And we do the same visualization with my clients. You're going to a big party. Think ahead of time. What do you want to feel like afterwards? What choices do you want to make? And if you can walk them through that event ahead of time, when they show up, they've got a plan in mind and they got a much better chance of succeeding. So those are all just like so powerful. And I don't think I put this on my little list. I told you, but tell me, why you mentioned celebrating ourselves. Why is it important when we do accomplish something and we, you know, are doing that stuff right, that we do take time to celebrate? I'll talk to a client. They've had like their whole week's really gone well, but there was that one meal, and out of the whole week, that's what they focus on. And we always go for the negative. And I think that whole celebration and emotional involvement is important. How does that tie in?
So one of the big insights neuroscience has given us, so this, you know, we could put a man on the moon 30, 40 years ago. It's only until very, very recently we've started to get any reasonable understanding of what goes on in between our ears, because we got this technology about 20 years ago called functional MRI scanners. So when I started to study psychology, this tech was just coming out and it was really exciting. And that for the first time allowed us to see inside the brain, what was actually going on inside the brain in real time. Before then, the only way we'd been able to understand what was going on inside the brain, or try to, that technology was the equivalent of trying to listen to a conversation through a wall with a glass, you know. It was very, very blunt and not very accurate. And some of the things that neuroscience has shown us is what we call confirmatory science. So it confirms some of the things we previously understood, which was great. But it did give us some new big insights. And one of those new big insights was just how much wiring there is in our brain for negativity, for beating ourselves up, for dwelling on the problem. Because our brain is a survival brain. And if we look at some of the science, we understand that people that are doing quite well in life, for every one negative they've got at least 3 positives. So that's Barbara Fredrickson's theory of grounded positivity. And the way I think about this, and we talk that we explain the brain in a few different ways in the book, starting with a really simple model, going up to more sophisticated emotional regulation insights, which you don't have to worry too much about because everyone gets the simple model. And the simple model is the lighthouse brain. So imagine you've got a lighthouse brain, you've got a lighthouse in your brain, and it's swirling, and that beam of light is spinning all the time. And there are 2 characters that live in the lighthouse. One is called Hugh. Hugh stands for horribly unhelpful emotions. And Hugh's job is to operate the spotlight. That's what it does. It spends all day operating the spotlight. The other character is called Wilhelmina Power or Willpower. And Hugh lives up, Willpower lives up in the lighthouse training room, and it's training and learning about the outside world and helping you to be your best. And what Hugh's first instinct to do it's to scan the past, stuff that's happened in the past, the present, and the future, things that haven't even happened yet, and it's looking for threats, for problems, for worries, for mistakes. That is its job. So naturally, we dwell and beat ourselves up much more than is helpful. And the way I think about this is that what we need to do is we need to get willpower down into the control room much more often and retrain Hugh to get better at interpreting what it's seeing. And if you think of your past, your present, and your future, it's a bit like a landscape. And what you see on the landscape is what you practice paying attention to. So if you practice paying attention to all the problems and all the worries and all the mistakes that you make, that's what will be easiest to see on the landscape. But instead, if you train yourself to start paying attention to the good things that you're doing and the little successes that you're getting, those things will become much more salient and visible on the landscape. So that's why at the end of every day, I write down a written reflection and I make myself pay attention to the little wins I've had that day and the things that I've been fortunate to be able to do that day. Because by doing that, I am reshaping my mental landscape and I'm forcing myself to pay attention to and build more, in very simple language, positive thinking neurons. So the short answer to your question, Susan, is that we are wired to pay attention to the problem because we have survival brains. Homo sapiens are excellent at surviving. We've been around for over 300,000 years. We've dominated the planet. But that means that we pay attention to the threat and the problem. And it's easier than ever to be reminded of threats and problems and worries in the modern world because we are so connected. And a big threat and a big problem for us is what other people think about us. Because the parts of our brain that tell us we are thirsty and we are hungry are literally physically hardwired into the parts of our brain that tell us about what other important people in our lives think about us. So we've got this social judgment thing going on all the time, social status. Why does that happen? Because evolutionary, if you wanted to survive as a Homo sapien, as a human being, it was much more likely to happen if you were in a team, in a group. And not only that, on a day-to-day basis, if you wanted to pass your genes on, you were much more likely to do that if you were in a group. So therefore, we are instinctively wired to be concerned about what important people think about us. You know, even the meanest person on the world probably cares about what their mother thinks about them. You know, there is someone they care about who that person thinks about them. And now we have social media, which we're streaming from. one of the reasons that's accelerating in growth so much is because it gives you the opportunity to tell everyone how great you are and how great your life is. But also, a lot of that stuff you're seeing isn't real. It's not in real time. You know, they don't know that it took 20 years of sweat and blood to actually write a book like this. And so, yeah, it's really important. But just thinking about the successes you've had isn't good enough. You've got to write it down. You've got to tell other people about it. And that is when you start to change your brain. You activate that process called neuroplasticity. And you move the acknowledgement that you did something good today from the short-term memory into the longer-term memory. And that's why having a space like the Habit Mechanic app is going to be so important, because there's no negativity on there. It's just about celebrating in a really, genuine way and supporting each other. So it's easy to form more of those positive wires. Does that answer the question, Susan?
It does. I'm part of a thing we call Together We Win, and it's wellness integration now, but it is that whole coming together. So it's a Facebook grow and it's Zoom calls every day. And you're getting to celebrate with each other. Or if somebody's going through a challenge, we can come along and support and give them different perspectives. And I know one of the things you said is you get good at what you practice. And you hear over and over that it takes 21 days to build a good habit. But I've heard that's not really based on science. So what's the truth? How long does it really take to create a habit?
Yeah, I think the 21-day thing probably is based on a little bit of science, but for me, it's not. This is the thing we can get caught up with in science, is that someone publishes one paper and it says something and you go, well, that must be true. That isn't the point of science. The point of science is to get lots of data, lots of publications from lots of sources that all point in the same direction. They all say similar things and they don't contradict each other. And that's the type of science that the Habit Mechanic's based on. Just as an example, one of the core scientists that I draw from, he's been cited over 200,000 times.
Wow.
That means the kind of stuff he's saying is very valid and reliable. So it might take 21 days to build one type of niche little habit. But what I've learned is that you get good at what you practice. And the trouble is that you might get good at one little niche habit after 21 days. But if you practice something different for the next 21 days, it won't be a habit anymore. So the science that we apply is you get good at what you practice. And that means that being a habit mechanic is a lifestyle approach. It's not a lifestyle where you get up at 4 a.m. and you have to do 1,000 press-ups and 1,000 sit-ups and do a massive. It's not about that. It's just about being more reflective and more purposeful and using the science to help you to do that. Because lots of people out there are reflective and purposeful, but they don't know they're not being informed by really good science as to how to make it work for them. So we get good at what we practice. If you practice worrying and beating yourself up all the time, guess what? You're going to get really good at that. And most people don't even recognize that they're doing that. So the way that learning works is you take some information from outside of your brain and you move it into your brain by paying attention to it. When you get it inside your brain, it sits in your short-term memory for about 30 seconds. And that brain can only hold about 5 to 7 bits of information at a time. And if you don't do something with those bits of information within 30 seconds, your brain dumps them. So if I say to you now, 30, 20, 75, 85, 90, 1002, 3012, 7, 8, 12, 9, 8. I've just overloaded your short-term memory, right? Because you can't recall all those things. So if you want to remember, you've got to write things down because that extends your short-term memory. And then if you want to move that from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, you keep practicing. And the more you practice, the more neurons in your brain you grow for that thing. So you move neurons from being like little thin cobwebs into cables. So the things you're really good at, for better or for worse, are things that you're practicing all the time. And you might not be aware you're even practicing them because how we think is very invisible to us. So whatever we want to get good at, we've got to get good at making it really easy for ourselves to practice it. And the challenge with a lot of the habits that help us to feel really good about ourselves and to be healthy and to be happy, they're what we call complex behaviors. And a great example of a complex behavior that many people have learned to do is learning to drive. Because that's the equivalent of building good sleep habits or stress management habits or eating habits or confidence habits or productivity habits or great leadership habits. And we all get that to learn how to drive takes about 65 hours. And it's a journey and it's a process, and it's not overwhelming because you do it in bite-sized chunks. And that's the way that we need to think about becoming a habit mechanic. It's a journey that we're going to go on. It's not about reading the book tonight and then saying, right, done that now. It's not one of those books. This is something you're going to keep using for the rest of your life. Because even if sleep isn't a problem for you right now, it might be when you have your next child maybe, or you get a different job. So you go back and it's in there. The guidance to build better habits in that area in there. If productivity isn't a challenge for you right now, it might be at some point in your life. If leadership and helping others isn't a priority for you right now, it might be at some point. So it's been described as a manual for life. It's a toolkit for success in life.
Yeah.
And it's all based on that very simple premise of you get good at what you practice, but practicing challenging things is difficult. So you need some help. So this is what the book is for.
And I think your driving analogy is great too, because when you first are driving, you are conscious of everything. You are mentally turning on the turn signal. You are going, oh, stop. You are just every little thing you are so aware of. But after you've been doing it for a while, all of a sudden you go someplace and you go, oh my gosh, I don't remember any of the things that I've done here. It's become so, automatic for the most part, or you drive out and all of a sudden you're going the wrong way because your brain was thinking you were going someplace you always go and you were trying to go someplace else. And it's just kind of becoming that observer. And I think you kind of just answered, one of my questions was, there's lots of books on habits. And, I was asking what's different about this one. And you kind of just described that. And I agree. It's like, it's a lot of the other books, they give you really good insights and they give you some different tools and different ways. But this it's so comprehensive that there's going to be something in there for everybody. And it really is much more functional. It's closer to like getting a course. I mean, you're really not just like taking a webinar, you are going and getting a college degree almost. It's kind of more the in-depth amount of things that you can do. And you can take it as deep as you want, but it's not overwhelming. And you've got those great imagery so that I can see little Hugh up there in my lighthouse. And I know you talk about the emotional and getting activated and being too charged, but coming, hey, willpower, your Wilhelmina comes behind and gives you a little massage to chill him out. And just some of those little things, if we go through life, we do something that's called stop, breathe, challenge, and choose. So it's like stepping back and becoming the observer, but letting you kind of reset so that you can calm down the horribly unhelpful emotions. I went out. Some of the little things like going, oh, that. So I mean, I think that's so great. Of course, that weight loss and weight gain is a big part of my story. And so often people, including me, you work really hard and you take all this weight off, but then, the weight comes back on. And I know that missing link that is just something that I'm constantly working on is that mental piece. And like you said, you don't just get the habit and keep it without being continually. It's something, I used to think, oh, I'll get to this healthy weight and I'll never have to deal with this again. Nope, it's something that till Jesus calls me home, it's something I'm working on, because you don't get there and arrive. So as a specialist that in resilience, in performance, and the brain, what kind of things would you say to me and to my clients to help us to really take charge of that, get where we want to be, and then keep on thriving?
I'm going to try and find my little weight tracking app, because I've been using these techniques to help me. Lockdown was quite a challenging period for most people.
It was.
I'm trying to find where this is now.
So many of us became so sedentary. We aren't just like normal movement. We weren't getting out and about, and even just going to the grocery store and things like we normally would. And here in Ohio, it gets pretty cold and icy in the winter. So I was doing really good with walking for a good chunk. And then the winter hit and it's like, oh boy, I sat way. I developed a really good, bad habit of sitting too much.
So I found it. So this is the top of the curve is about last August, maybe July. So I noticed that, I've put weight on in this kind of second lockdown period. I need to do something about it. So I use all these ideas for managing my own weight, and I think I've been, this is probably one of the last nuts I've cracked, if you like, in terms of managing myself. Obviously now, as we're starting to understand, and I've studied nutrition at university in degree level, but nutrition is so nuanced, and that understanding about how does it impact my body, I think that's really key to understand. So is it the carbohydrates, is it certain bread that you start to stack the weight on? But in very simple overarching terms, we've got to keep doing what we call self-watching. You know, and the weighing scale is a great thing to do that. Not every day, but I'm certainly weighing myself at least every other week, just to check and just to catch, wait a minute, I'm going, and ideally I'm doing it every week, just to see where I am, where am I? So you've got that way of watching yourself. It's much easier to watch your weight than it is what you're thinking about. So that's a great tool. And then it's about developing tiny sustainable habits that are going to keep you at the weight that you want to be kept at. And I used to think that because I played a lot of sport, I could eat what I wanted, you know, and therefore I didn't have to worry too much about what was in the food and the calories and the sugar count and all this kind of stuff. So getting better at self-watching what my own weight, you get on the weighing scale, as simple as that sounds, more regularly, and also really understanding, well, what's in the food. So using some of those food tracking apps and just seeing, oh, there's a lot of sugar in that, and I notice when I'm eating that, actually that's really putting the weight on, and just being more intentional about what does a healthy week look like for me. Because what I found is when I've lost a lot of weight, I just lose it, and then you go back to the old habits again, because it's easy to go back to those. It's almost like you need to establish a new set of habits when you're at your desired weight that keep you sustaining. And you can go up and down, it's fine. I'm going on a holiday in a few weeks and this kind of stuff. But it's about then checking back in with yourself, educating yourself about what you're putting into your body, really taking ownership of that. And then, you know, doing things like the daily tea plan. Just, I'm not going to eat any bread today, if that's it. But also making sure that we're healthy with what we're putting into our body. Our brain, and I don't often see this in dietary programs, our brain needs certain things, and this is all in the book. Your brain needs fuel, which it gets from, the best type of fuel is complex carbohydrates. It needs building blocks, which are fatty acids. Typically in our Western diets, we get plenty of omega-6 fatty acids, which is things like eggs, but we would typically depleted in omega-3 fatty acids, which we get from things like oily fish, but you can also get it from nuts and fruits and things. And then we also need antioxidants to help us to maintain our brain. So our diet has to be based around those things. And my diet now is. So self-watching, more intelligent self-watching, more intelligent planning. And I'm really grateful. Was it the Assyrians who created, or the Babylonians, I think, created the weekly structure? So the Monday, from Monday to Sunday, and then we got the months, and then we get the year. So, you know, at some point in our prehistoric lives, the calendar didn't really exist that it did now. I'm really grateful to those people for doing that, because it's a natural way of checking in with yourself. So check in with yourself every day. That doesn't mean you have to get on the scale necessarily. Check in with yourself at the end of the week, and check in with yourself at the end of the month. And if you use those calendar structures just to keep monitoring, you're not going to get these huge jumps in weight. You're going to be able to monitor yourself. And the habit mechanic approach isn't about being perfect. Let me just really say that absolutely clearly. It's about getting better at watching yourself and noticing where you are. And our life naturally goes up peaks and troughs. That might be from your weight to how you're thinking to all this kind of stuff. But it naturally goes up and down and peaks and troughs. And what habit mechanics are really good at is, one, recognizing when you think you're on a peak, is this actually a peak? Could I push myself a bit further? Do I need to take my foot off the accelerator here and, you know, take a little bit of time out? So you're better at managing that. Equally, when you're going down and you feel like you're in free fall, habit mechanics are better at catching themselves sooner and just checking and saying, wait a minute, I need to manage this a little bit better. You know, we can't avoid getting stressed, because
Yeah.
Our brain's natural response. But what you can do is be very proactive in how you manage the stress. So instead of the stress taking up a whole day of your time, can you get it down so it only takes half a day? Or instead of it taking an hour, can you do it so it only takes 5 minutes? So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Susan, there. But I use these techniques to help me to manage my weight, and it's something I'm always learning about. So the process works for any habit that you want to build.
It's just like you said, being aware, and it's data, and it's like it's your choice what you do with that data. But if you don't know, you don't have a choice, because you don't have a way to want to make a change. And
I think one of the big insights, and certainly the unique parts about our program, is the behavioral science, and we put that into what's called 9 action factors. And you use the 9 action factors to help to build habit building plans. So you can actually use what we know drives our behavior, things like reward and penalty systems, social influence, how you connect this tiny habit to a bigger goal, using triggers, making sure you're in the right brain state, making sure that your habits are tiny, making sure you've got the right knowledge and skills, making sure you get social support. And you activate all these factors using a scientific approach in a really simple, practical, accessible way, then you've got a much better chance of actually doing what you'd like to do. So we call it SWAP. You self-watch, you make an aim, then you've got to make a plan, and you've got to make the plan using good behavioral science. And that's why we've created the habit building plans, which are in the book.
I think it's great. I love I think one of the other things you had in there was write your failure story. And I was like, yeah, that's a light bulb. It's like, okay, if I don't make the changes, where am I going to be? What are the consequences? And it's like, okay, that's good to know too, so that we're aware of that. I told you early on that I thought the stuff you were doing was so cool. And man, I wish that I would have learned these things when I was a kid. And I said, man, have you ever thought about doing a school program? And he said, I've got one. So tell us a little bit about the program and how the whole habit mechanic philosophy is helping the school kids.
Yeah, so as part, my journey came from sports psychology, then into education, and then into business. I went from sports psychology into education because a very forward-thinking group of schools in the UK said, why wouldn't you teach everyone performance psychology? And can you come to work in our schools, these big sort of Hogwarts type boarding schools, and help us to implement what you understand about performance psychology into our schools and what we do? And off the back of that, the parents saw it, parents who work in places like the City of London and, very important and high paid jobs. Important is not the right word, but very high profile jobs. Yeah. And they were saying, this is much better than the stuff we're doing at work. Can you come and deliver this in our schools? And so that's how I took this into education. So we've had school programs now for over 10 years. Awesome. And yeah, it's the same thing. We teach the young people how their brain works, how to analyze their habits, and we empower them to build better habits. And we use things like planners, and in some of our programs, the kids get a lesson of this every week. They're doing their planner every day because the schools get what it takes to actually build better habits. And I think I think this is probably the most important thing you can teach young people. And I've seen it done very well intentionally. The intentions are good, trying to teach, but it fails because the people who are delivering it, who are designing the programs, bless them, but they haven't spent 20 years working and trying testing ideas. They haven't got 3 degrees in psychology. They don't know enough to make it work. I talk about this in a book when I was advising the government, and I heard someone say, "Oh, we tried confidence in our schools." This was actually an American chap, very high profile in education, and it failed. It didn't work. What are you talking about? He just didn't do it right, because if you teach children how to properly manage their confidence, it can't fail. And of course, we get it wrong because we just go for the self-esteem and we forget about the efficacy, which in our model is that it's like an igloo. You've got the igloo is your esteem, your belief in yourself, but the efficacy of the ice cubes, you've got to build up the ice cubes. But there's a whole chapter in the book about that to show you how to do it. But yeah, it's amazing. And what's also amazing, because we've been doing this for 10 years now, is I get messages on a weekly basis from young people that learned this when they were in school, telling me how they use it in everyday life, and they're so grateful they learned it. And when they find themselves going down, they go back to the resources and tools, and they start with better sleep, better diet, better exercise. So it shows you how powerful these techniques are. Yeah,
I just
it's
love that. Yeah, you're
amazing.
talking to American, it's probably, oh yeah, confidence. Let's give every kid the trophy. It's like, hey.
Yeah, so Jean Twenge, one of your great academics, she wrote a book called Generation Me that showed why that's an absolute disaster, and it leads to fragile confidence. And she shows the data over 20, 30 years where confidence became more and more fragile. So
I
yeah,
love it. Throughout the book, you share all kinds of great stories of different people who have applied these things, and there's athletes and scientists and businessmen and every angle of life. And so it's really interesting. You can learn, and it's like they're inspiring, and it just lets you know it's like at every level this applies. And I know you've actually worked with a lot of high performance athletes there in the UK. And what kind of changes do you see happening with them? How does that help them? Are they cheating and getting an advantage?
yeah, they're not cheating. I think that for elite athletes, they are at the extreme level of performance. What they do, most people can't do, and they really push them. Certainly, the people I work with really push themselves. So it's they're always looking for the edge and the advantage, but the process is the same. It's just about building better habits, and really, sports psychology, performance psychology is largely untapped. We're only just scratching the surface with this. And one of the things I talk about in the book is leadership science, for example, which is a term that I feel we've coined. I don't see anyone else using that term. And I think that leadership science can do for sport performance, for example, what sports science did for sport performance 20 years ago, because we can actually design training programs that help athletes to do what they need to do under pressure using behavioral science, which we don't currently do.
Yeah.
But yeah, athletes are just human beings at the end of the day. They're just trying to push themselves to an extreme level. And anyone who's high performing, we admire because they do things that we can't normally do. Writing a book like this is not easy, I tell you, over 20 years. And there's times where I felt like giving up. It's 107,000 words, over 550 pages. So I've had to use everything I know about being a habit mechanic to really keep persisting and keep going with it and keep getting it finished in a really good state. And yeah, I used all those things.
Did you say you were doing an audiobook of this too?
Yeah, we're doing the audiobook right now.
I thought you were recording. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, 550 pages of wow. It's like, woo,
yeah, so if it was a normal size book, it would be finished by now. We're about halfway through. I think the audiobook will be out in the summer. But what I would say is that because this is such a manual, you're going to get a lot more out of the audiobook if you've got the physical book as well.
I totally agree. It's like, man, I've got underlines, I've got little book things all throughout my little copy here. And it's like, it's got places to be a workbook where you are taking, it's like you said, writing down is so important. So it's like really good. And there's parts in there that maybe I wasn't resonating with yet, or I wasn't hearing, I think it's hard to hear your thoughts. So, but as it comes along, I go back and I know what's in there and I'm excited to keep diving in. So it's an exciting day. It's out there. Tell us, where do you want people to go to purchase the book? What's the best way to go about that?
If you go to Amazon and just search The Habit Mechanic, you can get it there. We've got hardback, paperback. The ebook is, I think, $3 or $2.99. Yes. That'll just be for the next few days, and it'll go back to the full price. So I don't know if you can share. We'll probably share a link with this video.
Yeah, as well. I'll put the link below so you can see that definitely. And
if you go to our website, which is tougherminds.co.uk, loads of free resources on there as well. But the book's got everything.
You go by thehabitmechanic.com. You need that URL. I looked it up the other night and it's available. So then you can go to habitmechanic.com, and then you can redirect it to your Tougher Mind site or wherever you want it to go, and you can change it up.
Someone will go buy that now, Susan. You've given that away. Someone will go buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm going to buy it. I'm going to resell it to you for a couple $1 million.
Yeah. It's another website to manage, maybe. But
well, it's just the URL. It didn't have to be another website. It's the front that you can promote easily. That they'll remember, and then you can direct it right to wherever you want. So your existing websites, but yeah, he's like, grab that name before somebody else does. It's like,
Thank you,
hey,
Stephen.
a little bonus, it's like, hey, but I mean, I'm just it's so fun getting to talk to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? You've shared tons of value with us today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I just think that it's wired into human beings that we want to do a little bit better. We want to be a little bit healthier. We want to be a little bit happier. And a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that we are what we are and that's it and we can't change. And that's just not true. Wherever you are right now in your life, think of it on a continuum. One end would be perfect. One end would be a disaster. And you can put anything on that continuum. We call it the P2 scale, poor to perfect. So you could put your sleep on there, your weight on there, your stress management on there, your parenting on there, your leadership on there, your business's performance on there, whatever you want to put on there. You'll be somewhere on the continuum. And all we're saying is that wherever you're currently at, you can move in either direction. If you don't do anything, you're likely to go backwards. But if you're proactive and you start to become a habit mechanic, you can just make tiny little changes and get tiny little wins. It's not about being perfect. It's about just doing a little bit better. I think if all of us look into the future into 10 years' time, it might be quite hard to think about what we want to achieve. But I think most people would agree they'd like to be healthy and happy. And they're the keys that the habit mechanic gives you. It's going to make it easier to unlock that health and happiness store in the long-term future, but also in the short-term future. And this is absolutely a manual for life. It's a toolkit for success. You don't have to read it back to front to back, although at some point, please do, go there with it. But you can just open it literally on a random page and you'll find something. Or go to the guide at the front, the index, whether it's sleep diet exercise, whether it's stress management, whether it's confidence, performing under pressure, productivity, learning how to create a great team, being a great leader, building a great culture. It's all in there and it's all bite-sized chunks. Yeah, it all makes more sense the more you get into it, but it also makes a lot of sense just if you read it in little chunks. So I don't want people to feel disempowered anymore. I think the world's more challenging than it ever has been for human beings. And I want this book to be a force for good. And our program's been described like that many, many times. But instead, I charge £4,000 a day if you want to buy my time. And that's going up all the time. Nothing I teach in those days isn't in that book. So hopefully now it's in the world. It's going to do loads and loads of good.
Yes.
So
I think it is. And thank you for, you've invested all your adult life into creating this. And I know writing a book is not easy. I've got lots of friends that are authors and most of them aren't this massive of an undertaking. Like I said, it doesn't take 20 years for most people to really have it. So thank you for doing that. I know it's going to impact so many lives and, I really appreciate you and I'm looking forward to hearing lots more from you in the future and just, the way that you impact and it'd be fun to see the app come out and all those things. And so y'all get over to Amazon, nothing else, buy the Kindle at least, buy the book, you won't regret it. It's really good. And I'd love to hear what you're learning and we can all be a part of the habit mechanic community. So thank you so much, Dr. Jon, for joining us and investing the time with us today.
No, thank you. Really appreciate it. And I hope it helps, as many people as it can. So if you don't fancy yourself, tell someone else about it because I think it'll help them.
Yeah, definitely share it. And I think I get some teachers and some business people involved in like tools that they won't regret. Well, thanks so much. And we will talk to you later.
Bye.